This episode is made possible by purchasing resources through the Creation Science for Kids store.
Welcome to the Creation Science
For Kids
show. Praise the Lord. I will give thanks to the Lord with my whole heart, in the company of the upright, in the congregation. Great are the works of the Lord, studied by all who delight in them. Full of splendor and majesty is his work, and his righteousness endures forever. He has caused his wondrous works to be remembered. The Lord is gracious and merciful. Psalm 111, 1-4. This is episode 11 of the podcast where we learn about Jesus, our Creator, and his amazing world. Hi, I'm Sherry Fields, your host, and I'm joined today by my co-hosts, Charity.
Hello.
And Joseph.
Hi.
Today, we're going to look at some men of science in the Bible, say hello to some baby islands, and learn about a weapon our earliest forefathers were skillful in. It's an exciting episode, and I can't wait to get started. But first, I'd like to ask you for a favor. If you have an iTunes or Stitcher account, please take a minute to leave us a review. This will be great for helping people find our show and an encouragement for us. Thanks. A couple weeks ago, I heard a sermon on Daniel, and something in chapter 1 made my ears perk up. Let's open our Bibles to Daniel chapter 1. We're going to look at verses 3 and 4. And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the princes, children in whom was no blemish, but well favored, and skillful in all wisdom, and cunning in knowledge, and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning and tongue of the Chaldeans. Now, if you look at this verse in anything besides the King James Version, you won't see the word science. They say things like discernment or understanding. And that's okay. Anytime you're translating into another language, there are bound to be several words that fit the original meaning. But 400 years ago, the translators thought the word science fit best for what Daniel was good at. So I decided to have a look at the other places the same Hebrew word was used to see what they were trying to get at. Let's look at Ecclesiastes 10:20. Would you read that for us, Joseph?
Curse not the king, no, not in thy thought, and curse not the rich in thy bedchamber. For a bird of the air shall carry the voice, and that which hath wings shall tell the matter.
Can you figure out which of those words would be the same as the word science in Daniel?
Matter.
Matter? What about you, Joseph?
Curse.
Curse? No. It's actually the word thought. Curse not the king, no, not in thy thought. Now, the verse is saying, don't even do what?
Don't even want the king to
think.
be cursed.
So this, whatever the word science is, it's happening inside your head. It's not something you say out loud, because what it's saying is, if you even think about it, it's going to make its way to the people that you've been mean to. Now, there's one other place that it occurs, and this is much more interesting. Charity, would you read to us 2 Chronicles chapter 1, verses 10-12?
Sure. Give me now wisdom and knowledge, that I may go out and come in before this people. For who can judge this thy people that is so great? And God said to Solomon, because this was in thine heart, that thou hast not asked riches, wealth, or honor, nor the life of thine enemies, neither yet hast asked long life, but hast asked wisdom and knowledge for thyself, that thou mayest judge my people, over whom I have made thee king. Wisdom and knowledge is granted unto thee, that I will give thee riches and wealth and honor, such as none of the kings have had that have been before thee, neither shall there any after thee have the like.
Okay, can you figure out which of those words is the word science?
Knowledge.
Knowledge. It is the word knowledge. Okay, so
think that.
we usually, when you think about learning this Bible story in Sunday school or wherever, we know that Solomon asked for wisdom. And in fact, in 1 Kings, which is where we usually read from, although it's more depressing, wisdom is the word that he asked for. But in 2 Chronicles, it adds a second word, wisdom and knowledge. It's that same word for science. Now, I'm going to read 1 Kings chapter 4. This is not something that I've ever heard in a sermon or a Sunday school lesson. This is something you have to read for yourself to find out. It's talking about King Solomon, and he says, "For he was wiser than all men, than Ethan the Ezrahite, and Heman, and Calcol, and Darda, the sons of Mahol," famous men in his time. "And his fame was in all nations round about. And he spake 3,000 proverbs." I don't think they all made it into Proverbs. It's not quite that long. "And his songs were 1,005. So he made music, and he said wise sayings." Now this is a special verse. "And he spake of trees, from the cedar tree that is in Lebanon, even unto the hyssop that springeth out of the wall. He spake also of beasts, and of fowl, and of creeping things, and of fishes. And there came of all people to hear the wisdom of Solomon, from all kings of the earth, which had heard of his wisdom." Okay, is there anything here that makes you think of science? When we study science, what kinds of things do we study?
We study the animals and the
Right.
plants.
What do we call the study of animals?
Biology.
Yeah, and zoology is especially for animals. Biology is all living things, which would include the trees. And he's talked about all kinds of plants. He talked about the large cedar trees and even the hyssop that springs out of the wall. That would be regular plants. So when they translated the word for Daniel on science, and then the same word was what Solomon asked for, did God give him something that we would consider science today that he was good at?
Yes.
Yes. Solomon not only was wise in what he thought and the decisions he made and even songwriting, he also was wise in studying and talking about the natural world. He was a scientist. Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
Scientific thinking isn't something that has only been around for a few hundred years. We call it the scientific revolution, which started in the 1600s. God has richly blessed us to live in societies where people can spend their lives studying the natural world and finding ways to use that knowledge and understanding to help us. But people have always been smart, and God's people have always been interested in learning more about the amazing world God gave us. Now I'm going to share something really interesting that I ran into on Creation Evolution Headlines, which is a really fascinating news website from a guy out in California who is a creationist. And he loves to tell all of us what's going on in the scientific community and share how that actually relates to the real world. He had an article, and you can find a link to it in the show notes, under Creation Science, the number 4kids/islands. And I found it really interesting. It turns out there are several islands that are babies. They just popped up out of the water in 2013. That's not very long ago. What's awesome is these islands give scientists ways to study what happens to landforms, and especially for plant scientists, because we've been talking a lot about plants with day 3 of creation, how a new piece of land that had no seeds on it at all, because there are no seeds in lava, gets filled with plant life. So there's one interesting one that belongs to Japan. It's quite a distance away. If you look at the map here, it is about 1,000 kilometers, so that's 600 miles away from Japan, out in the middle of the ocean. But it used to be a smaller island. You can see here, if you do an image search for Nishinoshima, you can see there used to be a small island, and right next to it a volcano started to come up. There are cool pictures of it erupting when it was just starting to form, and it slowly got bigger and bigger until it overwhelmed the existing island and made it quite a bit bigger. And this has been happening since 2013. So now it's giving scientists a laboratory to see how the seeds come. In the Red Sea, there are 2 new islands. One of them, Sholan Island, appeared in December of 2011. And a second one called Jadid surfaced in September 2013. So it's just about exactly the same age as this island off the coast of Japan. There are several other, it's a whole chain of volcanic islands that are coming up along a rift zone. So here's a picture. Look at that photo. It shows the 2 of the volcanoes are erupting right there, and you can see the waves. So I wonder where this picture was taken from. It doesn't look like it's quite as high as the International Space Station, although it's possible if they had a really clear view and a good camera. So there are some existing volcanic islands, and then there's brand new ones coming up. Now, not much has happened on these islands. They are too young. But there's one that creation scientists have been very interested in for about 50 years now. It's called Surtsey, and it's off the coast of Iceland. Back when Surtsey erupted, most scientists had been thinking in terms of uniformitarianism, where things take millions of years to happen. And they were quite surprised with what happened both geologically and biologically on this island. If you look here at this picture from Creation Ministries International, it shows the beach along the coast of Surtsey. And see all those pebbles? Mm-hmm. What shape are they? Rounded. Did it take them thousands of years to get all worn smooth by rolling around under the water?
No.
No, those are brand new rocks. Everybody knows it, and they already look well established. The most interesting thing for me, what does the ground look like when you get away from where the water always washes things away? So it's just sand and rocks.
Grassy and flowers.
Grass and flowers. Now, when Surtsey was first found, the evolutionary scientists figured that it would recapitulate or copy what they think happened with evolution. So they think that the first plant forms were mosses and lichens. So that's what they expected to see first colonize on the island and slowly build up, and after a long time finally get to flowering plants. But that wasn't at all what happened. Sure, there were mosses and lichens soon, but right away, or very quickly, there were flowering plants. Can you guess how the plants got there when there were no seeds on the island at first?
Birds.
Birds, very good. Birds would bring them in. Either they had swallowed the seeds and the part that grew didn't digest. And also it points out that both the birds' droppings and then the babies will spit up food that they can't digest, had excellent fertilizer that helped the plants to grow. So they were very surprised by how quickly the plants took over the island. The other thing that's interesting about Surtsey is it's already starting to erode quite a lot. Everything on the island of Surtsey is happening way faster than the uniformitarian and evolutionary scientists had expected, and even it's falling apart faster than they would have predicted, just like we learned about the other episode where arches and other geological formations are falling apart faster than they expected. But these new islands will give us more real-world examples to study, to see what the world would have been like, especially after the flood, because we aren't seeing God make brand new plants out of nothing, but we're seeing what would have happened. Like when Noah was still on the ark, it had landed on the mountains and he was waiting for permission to leave. What did the dove bring back?
An olive branch.
Yeah, an olive branch. So what did that tell Noah?
That plants were growing.
The plants were growing. And here on these kinds of islands, we can watch the same kind of thing happen. Creation scientists are also very interested in Mount St. Helens. Although it wasn't a new island, it still had a blast that went out sideways and killed everything along the surface. So any of the surface seeds, all the trees were knocked down, and the plants and animals started coming back there way faster than they had thought. So now, of course, the scientists are getting smarter and they've changed their stories. But there have been some scientists who have realized that what the Bible says about the world fits what we actually see when we study. I've heard of one scientist who he got saved because he realized he could trust God as he watched what happened after Mount St. Helens. I've got a link. There's a long article on sensational seeds at Creation Ministries International. It said they expanded from an article they had put in the old Schoolhouse magazine. And it has lots that you can study about seeds, but we don't have time to cover that in our episode here. But I found it because he had one section talking about the recovery after Mount St. Helens. So these volcanoes are a wonderful real-world laboratory. What do they help us to see about how God made the world?
Islands can just pop up and then start growing all different kinds of plants quickly.
What about you, Joseph?
It doesn't take millions of years for the animals and plants to set up a new ecology.
That's right. Yeah, if uniformitarians want to show in the real world what they think is true works, they would have to start an experiment now and wait for millions of years to find out whether they were right or not. Creation scientists don't have to wait nearly as long, do they?
No.
Now, it's time to hear from you. What do you have for us today, Joseph?
The atlatl.
What's that?
You'll have to wait and see. The atlatl is an ancient weapon we have found on every continent except Africa. We have found one buried in Ice Age snowpack near Yellowstone in North America. Another one shaped like a mammoth in France, and many across North America. The Australian Aborigines have used them up to today. Their version is called the Woomera. The name atlatl comes from the Aztec word for this thrower. An atlatl is a piece of wood or other material used to make your arm longer to throw a dart farther than you could without it. Basic atlatls are just long sticks with a notch cut onto the end of it to hold the back of the dart in place. Some of the ones we've uncovered are way fancier with weights and careful shaping. Australian woomeras usually were designed to do other things as well, like cut meat and start fires. We made our own atlatl yesterday out of a wooden spoon with a socket added at the end, made of cardboard attached with duct tape. Then we needed a good dart. An atlatl dart isn't at all like a dartboard dart. It looks like a long, skinny spear. Some darts had stone tips like an arrow. Some even have fletching feathers to help them fly straight. When archaeologists first uncovered the atlatl, they figured it was a spear thrower. They tried it out with a modern spear, and it didn't work very well. It was only in the 1980s that Bob Perkins figured out the secret was to use a flexible spear. A grown man can use an atlatl to throw a dart at 90 miles, 145 kilometers per hour. It has been tested to be able to pierce a target with more power than a bullet. We only used a reed we found on the ground for our dart, so it didn't work that well. But I was able to throw it farther and faster with our atlatl than I could without it. Many people who study the atlatl realize how smart our ancestors had to be to invent this weapon. Understanding how the dart moves uses calculus and something called wave mechanics. There is no question those who invented this weapon were just as smart as we are today.
That was wonderful, Joseph. The atlatl sounds like quite a weapon. Thank you for sharing with us. Well, before we go, I have a joke for you. How do scientists freshen their breath?
I don't know.
With experiments. Hey, did you know you can help keep this show going and learn more about creation at the same time? I've partnered with Creation Ministries International and Answers in Genesis to offer you some of the best resources for kids available. For example, Answers in Genesis carries a DVD where you can visit some missionary kids in Papua, Indonesia, and see how amazing their pets and backyard are. Thanks. Do you like science? Got a subject you want to learn about? Or maybe you like telling stories? If you send me a report, story, joke, or interesting idea, I might use it in a future show. Head over to creationscience4kids.com/podcast to contact me. Well, this finishes up our show for today. Until next time, have fun treasuring our amazing universe and Creator. Thou art worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power, for Thou hast created all things, and for Thy pleasure they are and were created. Revelation 4:11.